Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, issued a statement in tribute to his mother. He said, "Your Majesty, it has been an honour and privilege to serve you."
Buckingham Palace was in a state of shock after reports emerged that Prince Andrew had read the late Queen Elizabeth II's final will. For years, people had speculated about what she had left behind and who would inherit her vast fortune. Now, as unexpected details began to surface, tensions within the royal family grew. Some believed the will could alter everything, while others feared it might create conflict between King Charles and Prince William. Did the Queen's final wishes bring turmoil to the monarchy? And what could this mean for its future? Join us as we uncover the contents of Queen Elizabeth's last will and the secrets that have left Buckingham Palace in silence. As the royal family gathered in a solemn room, an air of anticipation hung thick. The silence was profound, the kind that only occurs when a momentous event is about to unfold. On the table lay a single envelope, its contents powerful enough to reshape the monarchy. This was Queen Elizabeth II's last will and testament. With a reign spanning 70 years, she had accumulated immense wealth and influence. Yet, this moment wasn't just about wealth, it was about legacy, power, and the monarchy's very future. And at the center of it all was Prince Andrew, the one chosen to reveal its contents. His role in this moment surprised many. Shouldn't King Charles be the one to read it? Or perhaps Princess Anne, given her unwavering sense of duty? Yet, it was Andrew who now held the will in his hands. He stood in the middle of the room, gripping the sealed envelope, his expression unreadable. The silence was so intense that even the sound of his breathing felt amplified. Around him, the family sat motionless, their emotions veiled yet palpable. King Charles sat stiffly, his hands tightly clasped. Princess Anne remained composed, though the faint tapping of her fingers against the armrest betrayed her nerves. William and Kate sat close together, their faces unreadable, while Harry, too, was present, though his expression was harder to decipher. Andrew inhaled deeply, knowing there was no turning back. With a steady hand, he slid his finger under the wax seal, breaking it open. The sound, though small, reverberated through the stillness like a thunderclap. He unfolded the paper, his hands trembling slightly, and began to read. The words lingered in the air, heavy with significance. Some faces remained composed, while others betrayed a flicker of emotion, relief for some, unease for others. As Andrew continued, the Queen's message became clear. She expressed gratitude to her family for their dedication to the monarchy, but soon, the will took a more personal turn. The words were formal, yet something about them felt distant. She had entrusted Windsor Castle to him, as expected, he had been prepared for this role his entire life. There were no surprises there. Yet, Charles sat motionless, his jaw tightening ever so slightly, as though waiting for something more. But that moment never arrived. Andrew then moved on to Princess Anne. The Queen had acknowledged her strength and loyalty, but her words contained no shocking revelations. Anne's face remained impassive, as she had never been one for dramatic reactions. But then came the unexpected, the moment that changed everything. Instead of following the long-standing tradition of passing down Balmoral estate to a single heir, the Queen had made an unprecedented decision. Balmoral, a place deeply personal to her, was not to belong to just one individual. Instead, she had chosen to share it among the entire royal family. This decision broke away from centuries of royal tradition, where estates were inherited by a single heir to reinforce direct succession and ownership. Yet, Queen Elizabeth had deliberately rewritten the rules, leaving the family stunned. But the silence that followed was not merely from surprise. It was understanding. Balmoral was not just a grand estate, it was the Queen's beloved retreat, a place where she had spent some of her most cherished moments. By choosing to share it among her family, she was sending a message far deeper than one of property division. This was about unity. For decades, Balmoral had been a sanctuary for the royal family, a refuge where they could escape the public eye, celebrate, mourn, and create memories away from the pressures of royal life. By ensuring that the estate remained accessible to everyone, the Queen was making certain that Balmoral continued to be a place of connection for generations to come. This decision forced the family to remain linked, no matter how far their personal choices and lives took them. Some saw it as an attempt to maintain control even after her passing. But beneath it all, her intentions were far more profound. The Queen had witnessed firsthand how distance, disagreements, and personal ambitions had fractured the royal family. She had seen tensions make headlines, private conflicts spill into the public eye, and relationships strained under the weight of royal duty. By keeping Balmoral as a shared space, she was urging them to remain a family despite their differences. But this was more than just about family unity. It was a reflection of her understanding that the monarchy's strength did not come from wealth, titles, or estates, but from relationships. A divided royal family would only weaken the institution she had dedicated her life to preserving. By ensuring they had a common ground, she was making certain that, no matter what happened, they would always have a reason to come back to one another. As the reading of the will continued, the weight of her decision settled upon the room. Some saw it as a challenge, others as an opportunity. But one thing was undeniable: Queen Elizabeth II had not just changed the future of Balmoral. She had changed the very fabric of the royal family itself. In her final act, she had left them with more than just an inheritance. She had left them with a powerful statement that even in the face of change, tradition must evolve, and family must come first. And in that moment, as the royal family sat in deep thought, one undeniable truth remained: the Queen's legacy was not just written in history but in the bonds she had tried to preserve. As Andrew continued reading, the Queen's generosity extended to Catherine, who received something truly significant. Among the most prized possessions in the royal collection, the Queen had left her the Vladimir tiara, a stunning symbol of grace and history. This exquisite piece, worn by generations of royals, now belonged to Catherine. She remained composed, her expression unchanged, yet Andrew noticed a faint flicker in her eyes. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Then, the room shifted once more as Andrew revealed an unexpected inheritance, something for Harry. Many had assumed, given the circumstances of recent years, that he would be left out entirely. Instead, the Queen had chosen to leave him an item rich with meaning. Andrew hesitated briefly before reading aloud: "To my grandson Harry, I leave the silver box that once belonged to my father, King George VI." This was no ordinary object. The box had carried the letters of a king, words that held both power and history. It was a reminder that, no matter the distance, family ties were never truly broken. As Andrew's voice echoed through the room, the atmosphere shifted once more. William shifted in his seat, casting a glance at Harry, yet Harry's expression remained unreadable. Was this an olive branch, an offering of reconciliation? Or was it a subtle reminder of all that he had left behind? No one could say for certain. Andrew pressed on, but the tension had taken on a new form. The Queen's decisions, though written in plain terms, left lingering questions in their wake. Her will was more than just an allocation of wealth; it was a testament to her understanding of duty, legacy, and the weight of responsibility. And yet, as Andrew neared the final passages, the most shocking revelation was still to come. The room remained still as Andrew continued reading, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the Queen's carefully chosen words. This wasn't just about inheritance, it was about the future of the monarchy itself. King Charles sat motionless, his hands folded before him, though the tension in his face was evident. He had spent his entire life preparing for the crown, yet now, with each word spoken, it became clear that his mother's final decisions were reshaping everything. Andrew cleared his throat and read the next name, Princess Anne. As the Queen's only daughter, there had never been a doubt that Anne would be remembered in the will. Yet, few expected the magnitude of what she was about to receive. "To my beloved daughter Anne," Andrew read, "I leave Sandringham Estate." Anne's expression remained characteristically composed, but a flicker of surprise crossed her face. Sandringham was more than just a royal residence, it was the heart of the family's Christmas traditions, a home filled with decades of cherished memories. Before anyone could dwell on this, Andrew continued. "To my youngest son, Edward, I leave Bagshot Park, with the hope that he continues his quiet but essential work for the crown." Prince Edward had long remained in the background, free of controversy and deeply committed to royal duties. His inheritance was more than just a residence, it was a recognition of his steadfast loyalty and an encouragement to take on an even greater role in the monarchy's future. But as Andrew read on, the room braced for what was to come next. As the will delved deeper into recent events, the atmosphere grew heavier. The first part of the reading had already caused ripples, but what followed was even more unforeseen. King Charles' hands tightened on the armrests of his chair, his fingers tapping against the wood in frustration. His mother's final wishes had introduced a level of unpredictability he had not anticipated. He had inherited Windsor, but was that enough? The Queen's decision to divide Balmoral had already changed everything. What else remained to be unveiled? Anne, ever composed, sat beside Charles. Though she rarely displayed emotion, her posture had subtly shifted. She had been devoted to royal service for her entire life, yet even she hadn't expected to receive something as monumental as Sandringham. This was not just a property, it was a statement, a recognition of her unwavering dedication. Meanwhile, William sat beside Catherine, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with contemplation. This was not just about his own future, it was about the legacy of his children as well. He cast a brief glance at Catherine, who remained poised, absorbing every word, fully aware that what was being read would shape the destiny of their family. Taking a steady breath, Andrew turned the page and began reading the next section. Once again, it was about Harry. I want Harry to take good care of the ceremonial sword of King George VI. A hush fell over the room. The weight of this bequest was undeniable. Harry had been distant from the royal family for some time, his departure making headlines and igniting controversy. Yet, here he was, still being included in the Queen's final wishes. The ceremonial sword was not just an heirloom, it was a symbol of strength, duty, and the very essence of the monarchy. It represented the values upon which the royal family was built, and now, the Queen had entrusted it to Harry. William's jaw tightened, his hands forming fists at his sides. He had remained composed for most of the reading, but this was a step too far. How could Harry, who had chosen to walk away, still be given something of such deep significance? It was beyond comprehension. King Charles, too, struggled to maintain his usual composed demeanor. The sword was more than an object, it was a recognition of duty. Yet, Harry had abandoned that duty. Was the silver box not enough? Why would the Queen bestow upon him something so meaningful? Anne remained still, observing the rising tension in the room. She had witnessed many family conflicts over the years and had learned the value of restraint. Even so, she could not deny the gravity of this decision. Andrew, sensing the mounting emotions, continued reading, determined to press forward despite the murmurs in the room. To my great-grandchildren, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, I leave not only the treasures of our family but also the knowledge I have gained over the years. Catherine drew a slow breath. She had anticipated this moment. The Queen had always held a deep fondness for George and Charlotte, recognizing in them the future of the monarchy. This inheritance was more than just material wealth, it was wisdom, a passing of the torch to the next generation. The Queen's words had been spoken, yet their impact was only just beginning to unfold. The room remained silent, each member of the royal family lost in thought. The inheritance was not just about possessions, it was about responsibility, expectations, and power. But there was still more to come. And what Andrew was about to reveal next would shake the very foundation of Buckingham Palace itself. This was not just about distributing possessions, it was about passing down a legacy. The Queen was not merely leaving behind material wealth, she was imparting wisdom, guidance, and expectations. Her message was clear, each member of the family had a role to play in shaping the future of the monarchy. This was bigger than titles or estates. It was about preparing the next generation for the immense responsibility ahead. William felt the weight of this realization settle over him. He was not just raising his children, he was preparing them for a destiny much larger than themselves. The survival of the monarchy depended on them, and the Queen had made certain they understood that. Andrew turned another page, his voice steady as he continued reading. To my great-grandson, Prince Louis, I have left a handwritten letter, a letter for you to learn from, to guide you as you grow. It was a simple gesture, yet profoundly meaningful. Though Louis was still young, the Queen had not overlooked him. She knew that one day he would have questions, that he would seek understanding, and she had left something just for him. Catherine felt her throat tighten with emotion. The Queen had always been thoughtful, but this letter was something deeply personal. One day, Louis would hold it in his hands and know that his great-grandmother had written it with love and foresight, just for him. The room remained hushed, each person still processing the significance of what had been read. But Andrew was not finished yet. He took a breath and turned the final page. To my son, King Charles, I leave my private collection of letters, diaries, and personal writings. These are not for the public, they are for you. To understand, to reflect, and to remember. Charles blinked, momentarily stunned. He had not anticipated this. His mother had entrusted him with her most private thoughts, the reflections she had never shared with anyone else. These writings held her fears, her hopes, and her meditations on the monarchy. They were the deepest part of her, and now, they belonged to him. He swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. He had spent his entire life preparing for this role, waiting decades to become king. And yet, as he sat there, clutching onto his mother's final words, he realized something profound: she had always known more than she had let on. She had been shaping him, preparing him for this moment. Even in her absence, she was still guiding him. The silence in the room was heavy with thought. The Queen's will had done more than just allocate her possessions, it had revealed her final judgments. It showed her faith in certain people and her reservations about others. Some felt honored, others felt the sting of uncertainty. But the reading was not over yet. Andrew's voice broke the silence. There is one last part of the will. And with those words, the real shock was revealed. As Andrew finished reading the final section, the room was enveloped in an almost palpable stillness. The weight of the Queen's last words hung over them like a silent storm, undeniable, impossible to ignore. The atmosphere was charged not only with grief but with the gravity of what had just been spoken. These were not just formalities or routine legal matters, they were the last wishes of Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch who had devoted her entire life to duty, service, and the unity of her family and country. Now, in her absence, her words carried even more power. Andrew's hands, slightly unsteady, folded the final page of the will with great care, placing it gently on the table as if even the parchment itself bore the weight of history. His gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of the royal family. He spoke slowly, ensuring that every word was absorbed. The Queen's final request was not about wealth or status, it was about something far more significant: unity. Despite the tensions, the conflicts, and the wounds of the past, she had hoped her family would remain strong together. She wished for them to choose peace over discord, to show resilience in adversity, and to embrace the true meaning of service, not as a burden but as a privilege. These were the principles that had defined her life, and in her final message, she implored her family to uphold them. These words were not merely meant to be heard, they were meant to be lived. The message struck deep, resonating in the hearts of each person present. For years, tensions had simmered beneath the surface, personal choices, public scrutiny, and internal conflicts had all strained the ties within the monarchy. And yet, in this moment, those divisions seemed small in comparison to the Queen's vision of what they could be. Some members of the family sat in silence, processing the enormity of her words. Others exchanged glances, as if searching for answers, or perhaps the courage to begin mending old wounds. No one spoke, but the impact was undeniable. Even in death, the Queen's voice still commanded influence. Charles remained motionless, his hands folded together, his face carefully composed. Yet, there was a tension in his posture. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, knowing that one day he would ascend the throne. And still, even with all that preparation, the reality of it was overwhelming. His mother had set the standard for leadership with dignity, and now, it was his duty to uphold those same ideals. This was not an easy task. He had anticipated a straightforward transition, yet his mother had left him something far more significant than just a title. She had left him expectations, a carefully laid out framework he had not fully anticipated. He would not have unchecked power, he would have to navigate within the structure she had established, preserving the balance she had so meticulously maintained. It was not the legacy he had envisioned, but he had no choice but to accept it. Yet, even more pressing than his own responsibilities was the undeniable truth the will had highlighted: the fractures within his own family. The strained relationships between him and his sons, William and Harry, could no longer be ignored. His sister, Anne, steadfast and unwavering, had always been the pillar of support, yet even she had witnessed the deep struggles they had all faced. And now, in the Queen's final words, there was a call for something Charles was no longer sure was possible: reconciliation. The weight of that expectation bore down on him, just as heavily as the crown itself. And sat in quiet contemplation, absorbing every word with deep reflection. She had never been one to seek the spotlight, always dedicated to her duties without expecting recognition. Her mother had entrusted her with Sandringham, a great honor, but also an immense responsibility. Yet, duty was something Anne had always embraced wholeheartedly. She had witnessed her mother rule with unwavering grace, always prioritizing the monarchy over personal emotions. More than anyone, she understood the weight of such a role. But as she sat there, she couldn't help but reflect on the cherished moments they had shared, the peaceful afternoons spent horseback riding together, the deep conversations about tradition and service. The Queen had not been one to openly express emotions, yet Anne had always known how deeply she cared. Now, in her absence, it was up to them to preserve everything she had built. For Catherine, the realization was just as profound. The Vladimir tiara was now hers, a symbol of elegance, continuity, and the expectations placed upon her. But more than an heirloom, it was a reminder of what lay ahead. The Queen had chosen her deliberately, acknowledging her future role as Queen Consort. She had always been aware of this destiny, but in this moment, it felt more real than ever before. William, too, felt the enormity of what had just been revealed. His grandmother had been more than just the sovereign, she had been his mentor, his guide. From childhood, she had instilled in him the values of service and duty, shaping his understanding of leadership. Yet, as he listened to the final words of her will, he grasped something even greater. She had foreseen the future, recognized the evolving times, and entrusted them with the responsibility of shaping what came next. Then there was Harry. Despite stepping away from royal duties, he had been mentioned twice. The ceremonial sword of King George VI had been entrusted to him, a symbol of honor and legacy. The room stirred at this revelation. Such an emblem of history had been given to the one who had chosen a different path. Harry had left the monarchy, seeking a life beyond it, yet the Queen had still included him in her final wishes. That decision spoke volumes. For William, it was frustrating. He had remained loyal, upheld his duties, and fulfilled every expectation placed upon him. Yet, even now, Harry was acknowledged. For Charles, it was another reminder of the complexities within their family. For Anne, it reinforced an unshakable truth: no matter how much the monarchy evolved, family ties remained deeply embedded in their shared history. Some felt Harry's inclusion was undeserved. He had distanced himself, forged a new path, yet the Queen had still recognized him as an integral part of the royal story. It was a testament to her unwavering belief in the bond of family, no matter the circumstances. The younger generation had also been given a place in this legacy. Prince George and Princess Charlotte were not merely heirs to titles, they were inheritors of values, lessons, and the responsibility to carry forward their great-grandmother's vision. Even young Prince Louis had been acknowledged, a sign that the Queen had carefully considered the future beyond her reign. Yet, despite the significance of the will, the atmosphere in the room remained tense. No arguments were spoken aloud, but emotion simmered beneath the surface. Some sat in deep thought, others unsettled by what had been revealed. The future now rested in their hands, but there was no clear path forward. And yet, even those who had not received material inheritances understood the deeper message the Queen had left behind. More than wealth or possessions, she had left behind a structure, a vision for the monarchy's future. As the family slowly dispersed, each lost in their own thoughts, one truth became clear: the Queen's will was not just about dividing her estate. It was a final act of leadership, ensuring that her life's work would not end with her passing. Her reminder of their unbreakable bonds was both a comfort and a challenge. Blood, duty, and history had brought them to this moment, but those ties could only endure if nurtured with understanding, forgiveness, and shared purpose. The choice was now theirs. In the end, Queen Elizabeth II's final words were not just a farewell, but a call to action. And as the room remained silent, each member of the royal family had to ask themselves a difficult question: were they ready to answer it? Would they continue down separate paths, allowing past grievances to shape their future? Or would they honor her wishes and find a way forward, together? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more amazing content. We'll see you in the next video.